The lifeguard's whistle cuts through screaming chaos. A body floats face down in the deep end. But when they flip her over, everyone gasps, because the girl they thought was drowning is smiling. And the real victim, she's standing at the pool's edge, dripping wet, phone in hand, watching her entire world crumble in 10 viral seconds. The chlorine stung Hoa's eyes as she surfaced, gasping for air. Around her, the Westridge Academy swimming pool erupted with the usual Friday afternoon chaos. Splashing, laughter, the sharp tweet of Coach Morrison's whistle demanding order that never came. "Move it, scholarship girl." The voice cut through the noise like glass. Karen Whitmore stood at the pool's edge, arms crossed over her designer swimsuit, her blonde hair pulled into a perfect ponytail that probably cost more than Hoa's entire wardrobe. Behind her, Madison and Bree flanked her like matching bookends, their smirks identical. Hoa treaded water, her heart already sinking. 3 months at this school, and Karen had made every single day a calculated nightmare. "The deep end is for swimmers who actually belong here," Karen continued, her voice carrying across the water. Several heads turned. Phones emerged from towels. "Not charity cases who can barely doggy paddle." "I'm just swimming," Hoa said quietly, adding how small her voice sounded. "You're existing where you shouldn't." Karen's smile was surgical. "Like always." Hoa swam toward the ladder, face burning. She'd learned not to engage. Engagement meant escalation, and Karen's family sat on the school board. Hoa's mother cleaned their pool house every Wednesday. She pulled herself onto the deck, water streaming from her modest one-piece. Last year's clearance rack find that she'd grown out of but couldn't afford to replace. Karen's gaze raked over her like a price scanner. "God, even your swimsuit is poor," Karen announced. "Is that from Goodwill? Because I literally donated one just like it last year." She paused for effect. "Oh wait, maybe that is mine." The laughter that followed felt like a physical blow. Hoa grabbed her towel, wrapping it around herself like armor that was already failing. "Leave her alone, Karen." The voice was male, frustrated. Hoa glanced up to see Derek Chen, captain of the swim team, Karen's on-again, off-again boyfriend, standing near the diving board with his arms crossed. Karen's expression flickered, just for a second, before reconstructing itself into something dangerous. "Excuse me." "You heard me?" Derek walked closer and Hoa's stomach twisted. She didn't need a hero. Heroes at Westridge always made things worse. "This is getting old. She's not bothering anyone." "And that's your concern because—" Karen's voice dropped into a register Hoa recognized, territorial, possessive. "Because I have eyes, because I'm not a complete asshole," Derek's jaw tightened. "Pick one." The pool deck had gone quiet. Even Coach Morrison had stopped pretending to organize kickboards. Karen's smile returned, but it was different now. Calculated. She walked toward Derek with the confidence of someone who'd never lost a battle that mattered. "You're defending her," she said it like the word tasted bad. "That's interesting, Derek, really interesting." Her gaze slid to Hoa. "Does he know your mom scrubs toilets at my house? Does he know she probably steals our leftovers to feed you?" "My mother doesn't steal anything," Hoa said, her voice cracking despite herself. "Oh, it speaks." Karen's laugh was crystalline. "And with such conviction, tell me, do you practice that dignity thing in the mirror? Because it's very convincing. Almost makes you forget you're wearing my hand-me-down swimsuit while discussing your maid mother's integrity." Something inside Hoa snapped. 3 months of swallowed words, lowered eyes, silent humiliation, all of it compressed into a single moment of clarity. She was tired, so unbearably tired. "At least my mother works for what she has," Hoa heard herself say, "instead of coasting on Daddy's money while treating people like they're disposable." The pool deck seemed to inhale. Karen's face transformed. The mask slipped, revealing something raw and ugly underneath. "What did you just say to me?" "You heard her," Derek said quietly, "and she's right." Karen's hand moved so fast Hoa barely registered it, a sharp shove against her shoulder. Hoa stumbled backward, her feet slipping on the wet tile, arms windmilling for balance she couldn't find. The water hit her back like concrete. She went under hard, the momentum driving her down. Her head cracked against something, the pool wall, maybe, or the lane divider. And suddenly the world was all bubbles and muffled sound and pain radiating through her skull like lightning. She tried to surface, couldn't. Her limbs felt heavy, disconnected. The water above her shimmered with refracted sunlight, so close but impossibly far. "Breathe," her brain screamed. "You need to breathe." But her body wouldn't cooperate. The water filled her nose, her throat. She was sinking, and the panic was worse than the drowning because she could see everything. The shapes moving above the surface, the ripples of movement, the shadow of Corinne's figure still standing exactly where she'd been. Not moving, not helping, just watching. Then hands, strong, urgent, grabbed her arms. Derek. She knew it was Derek even though she couldn't see clearly. He hauled her upward, breaking the surface with her dead weight in his arms. Air hit her lungs like fire. She coughed, gagged, water streaming from her nose and mouth. Derek supported her against the pool edge while she heaved, trying to remember how breathing worked. "What the hell, Corinne?" His voice was savage. She hit her head. She slipped. Corinne's voice was different now, higher, defensive. Everyone saw she slipped. "You pushed her." This was from Jade Nguyen, a sophomore Hoa barely knew who was now standing with her phone extended. "I got the whole thing. You pushed her, and then you just stood there while she—" "Give me that phone." Corinne lunged for it, but Jade danced backward. "Already uploaded," Jade said, her voice shaking but determined. "Cloud backup, you can't delete it." The color drained from Corinne's face. Around them, other phones were emerging, fingers already tapping, sharing. The video was multiplying, spreading like a virus through digital bloodstreams Hoa didn't even understand. "You don't know what you just did," Corinne said softly, and for the first time she sounded uncertain. "Yeah, I do." Jade looked at Hoa, still coughing against Derek's shoulder. "I did the right thing." Coach Morrison finally remembered his authority and came running, whistle bouncing against his chest. "What happened? Someone talk now." Multiple voices erupted at once. Derek's arm stayed around Hoa's shoulders as the world tilted sideways, her vision tunneling. She could hear Corinne's voice rising above the others. "Accident. Slipped. Everyone's overreacting," but the words felt distant and meaningless. Because Hoa was watching something else entirely. She was watching the way Corinne's friends had stepped back from her, the way Madison was whispering to Bree, eyes wide, the way Derek was looking at his girlfriend, ex-girlfriend, with something that looked like disgust. And she was watching the phones. So many phones, all pointed in Corinne's direction now, recording her panic as she realized the narrative was slipping from her control. The power dynamics of Westridge Academy were built on silence, on victims who stayed quiet because speaking up meant social suicide, on witnesses who looked away because involvement meant becoming the next target. But silence required darkness, and someone had just turned on the lights. "I need the pool cleared," Coach Morrison was saying. "Everyone out, now. Corinne Whitmore, you come with me. Derek, get Hoa to the nurse's office." Corinne's eyes met Hoa's across the chaos. There was hatred there, yes, but also something else, something that looked almost like fear. "This isn't over," Corinne said, so quietly only Hoa could hear it. "You have no idea what you've started." But as Derek helped Hoa to her feet, as Jade fell into step beside them like an unexpected ally, as the video continued its digital proliferation through the student body's phones, Hoa realized something Corinne didn't yet understand. It was already over. It had ended the moment someone decided to watch instead of look away. The moment evidence replaced deniability. The moment consequence came for someone who'd thought herself untouchable. Corinne just didn't know she was drowning yet. But she would. The nurse's office smelled like antiseptic and the kind of false comfort that came in industrial-sized bottles. Hoa sat on the examination table, a cold compress pressed against the growing knot on the back of her head, while Nurse Patterson checked her pupils with a penlight. "Mild concussion, most likely," Patterson said, her voice professionally gentle. "Your mother's been called. She's on her way." Hoa's stomach dropped. Her mother, who was probably in the middle of cleaning someone's house, who would have to leave work early, who would lose hours she couldn't afford to lose because Hoa couldn't just keep her head down for one more day. "I'm fine," Hoa said automatically. "You can just sit there until your mother arrives." Patterson's tone left no room for negotiation. She glanced at Derek, who'd been hovering near the door like a worried guard dog. "Mr. Chen, you should return to class." "I'll wait," Derek said. That wasn't a suggestion. Derek's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Before leaving, he looked at Hoa with an expression she couldn't quite read. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I should have said something sooner, before it got this bad." The door closed behind him, leaving Hoa alone with the nurse and the steady throb of her headache, and the dawning realization that everything was about to get so much worse. Her phone buzzed, then again and again. Patterson raised an eyebrow. Popular today. Hoa pulled out her phone with trembling fingers. Her screen was flooded with notifications, Instagram, Snapchat, messages from numbers she didn't recognize. She opened Instagram first. The video had 847 views, posted 20 minutes ago. She watched herself stumble backward, arms flailing. Watched Karen's face, so clear in the high-definition cruelty of smartphone cameras, showing not shock but something colder. Calculation. Karen stood there for 3 full seconds while Hoa sank, doing absolutely nothing. The comments were brutal. Karen Whitmore is a literal psycho. This is attempted murder, WTF. Rich girl thinks she can kill people, expel her now. My cousin goes to Westridge and says Karen's been bullying this girl for months. Someone send this to the police. Hoa's hands shook so badly, she almost dropped the phone. Ms. Nguyen, Patterson's voice seemed to come from very far away. Are you all right? But Hoa couldn't answer because her phone was ringing now. Unknown number, she answered without thinking. Hoa Nguyen? The voice was male, professional. This is Bradley Mitchell from Channel 7 News. We've obtained footage of an incident at your school today. We'd like to get your statement for our evening broadcast. She hung up. The phone immediately rang again. Different number. Don't answer that, Patterson said sharply, reaching for the phone. Give it here. Hoa handed it over, feeling disconnected from her own body. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. She just wanted to swim. She just wanted to make it through one day without becoming a target. Now she was becoming something else entirely, something public, something that people would have opinions about. A victim. Karen Whitmore sat in Principal Hawthorne's office, her father on one side, the family attorney on the other. Across the desk, Hawthorne looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past hour. The video is quite clear, Mr. Whitmore, Hawthorne said carefully. He was a thin man who'd spent 20 years learning how to navigate the politics of wealthy families. Your daughter pushed Ms. Nguyen and then failed to render aid while she was clearly in distress. The video shows a schoolyard altercation that got out of hand, Marcus Whitmore said smoothly. He was a man accustomed to bending reality through sheer force of will and legal expertise. Karen has already explained that she was in shock. That's a normal response to a traumatic situation. Dad, I told you, Karen started. Not now, sweetheart. Her father's voice was steel wrapped in velvet. Let me handle this. Karen sank back in her chair, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. She'd watched the video 17 times, watched herself stand there while Hoa sank. In her memory, it had been seconds, just a frozen moment of satisfaction before Derek jumped in. But on camera, with the timestamp burning in the corner, it was 3 full seconds of deliberate inaction. 3 seconds that looked like exactly what they were, a choice. The problem, Mr. Whitmore, Hawthorne continued, is that this isn't just a school matter anymore. The video has gone viral. We're receiving calls from news outlets, parents, advocacy groups. The board is convening an emergency meeting. I'm sure the board will be reasonable, Whitmore said, and the implicit threat in his voice was clear. He'd donated the new gymnasium, the library computers, half the athletic equipment. Karen has been a model student, one mistake. One mistake that nearly drowned another student, said a new voice from the doorway. Everyone turned. Dr. Sarah Chen stood there in her hospital scrubs, still wearing her ID badge from St. Mary's Medical Center, Derek's mother. And more relevantly, the head of the hospital where Marcus Whitmore's law firm handled medical malpractice cases. Dr. Chen, Hawthorne stood quickly. I wasn't aware you'd been called. I wasn't called. I came when my son told me he'd just watched a girl nearly die while her attacker stood by and did nothing. Sarah's voice was calm, clinical. I've reviewed the video. That child shows signs of a concussion. She could have drowned. She could have permanent neurological damage. This isn't a schoolyard altercation. Marcus Whitmore's expression hardened. With all due respect, doctor, you're not a police officer or a school administrator. This isn't your concern. With all due respect, counselor, I'm a mandatory reporter, and I've just witnessed video evidence of assault and child endangerment. Sarah pulled out her phone. I've already filed a report with Child Protective Services and the police. I thought it would be professional to inform you before they arrive. Karen felt the blood drain from her face. The police. You can't do this, Marcus said, standing. This is a civil matter at best. A minor was assaulted and endangered by another minor. That makes it criminal. Sarah's gaze shifted to Karen, and there was something in her eyes that made Karen want to shrink into her chair. Not hatred, something worse, disappointment. Your family has been friends with ours for years, Marcus. Our kids grew up together, which is why I'm here giving you a 30-minute head start before the authorities arrive. You'll want to call a criminal attorney. Roscoe handles corporate law. She turned to Hawthorne. The video shows at least a dozen students witnessed this. I suggest you secure their statements before parents start advising their children not to talk. Then she was gone, leaving a silence that felt like the moment before a bomb detonates. Marcus Whitmore's phone was already at his ear. Get me David Park, now, tell him it's an emergency. Karen stared at her hands, they were shaking. This morning she'd been untouchable, queen of Westridge Academy, the girl everyone wanted to be or be with. Now she was becoming something else. Something with words like assault and criminal attached to it. Dad, she whispered, what's going to happen? Her father covered the phone. When he looked at her, his expression was harder than she'd ever seen it. What's going to happen is you're going to do exactly what I tell you, starting with keeping your mouth shut. Do you understand me? Karen nodded, feeling very small. The lawyers will handle this, Marcus continued. This is a PR problem, nothing more. We'll settle with the family, issue a public apology, maybe have you do some community service. By next semester, this will be forgotten. But even as he said it, Karen's phone buzzed with another notification. Then another. Her Instagram was exploding. Her follower count was climbing, not with fans, but with people coming to watch her burn. The comments had moved past the video. They were posting screenshots of old texts, old photos. Madison had shared the group chat where Karen had called Hoa the help's daughter. Someone had found the time Karen, accidentally, spilled juice on Hoa's scholarship application essay. Another video showed Karen tripping Hoa in the hallway, then laughing. A pattern, that's what they were documenting. Not a mistake, but a pattern. Karen's phone rang. Unknown number, she answered without thinking. Karen Whitmore? The voice was young, female, excited. This is Melissa Torres from Teen Voice Online magazine. We're running a story on bullying culture in elite private schools, and your situation has become a focal point. Would you like to comment on allegations that you've been systematically harassing Hoa Nguyen for months? Karen hung up, but the phone immediately rang again. Don't answer it, her father snapped. In fact, give me your phone now. Karen handed it over, feeling like she was drowning. Like she was the one sinking into chlorinated water while everyone stood and watched. Hawthorne cleared his throat. I should inform you that pending the investigation, Karen will be suspended from school. It's standard protocol. Absolutely not, Marcus said. Suspension implies guilt. Karen will remain in school under supervision if necessary, but she will not be suspended. Mr. Whitmore, the other students. The other students will do what students always do. They'll forget about this by next week when something else catches their attention. Marcus stood, straightening his suit jacket. Karen made a mistake. She's 17 years old. This does not define her, and I won't allow a mob of teenagers with smartphones to destroy her future. But Karen wasn't listening anymore. She was thinking about Hoa's face in that moment before she fell. The surprise, the fear, and something else, something Karen had seen but not registered until now. Resignation. Like Hoa had been expecting it, expecting Karen to push her too far, expecting no one to stop her. And she'd been right. Karen had spent months making Hoa's life miserable because she could, because it was easy, because Hoa was everything Karen pretended not to be afraid of, smart without trying, kind without calculating, beautiful in a way that didn't require a stylist or a filter. And now everyone could see what Karen really was, not powerful, just cruel. The door opened. 2 police officers stood in the hallway, their faces professionally neutral. Karen Whitmore, the first officer said, we need to ask you some questions about an incident at the pool today. Marcus stepped forward immediately. My daughter won't be answering any questions without her attorney present. That's your right, sir, but we'll need her to come to the station. Karen watched her father's face turn red, watched him start to argue. Watched the entire machinery of privilege rev up to protect her from consequences she absolutely deserved. And somewhere in the building, Hoa Nguyen was probably sitting with an ice pack, waiting for her mother who cleaned houses to drive her home in whatever car they could barely afford to maintain. The inequality of it hit Karen like a physical blow. She'd nearly killed someone, and her first concern had been her Instagram followers. "I'll go," Karen heard herself say quietly. "I'll answer their questions." "Karen," her father started. "I'll go," she repeated louder this time. "I did it. The video doesn't lie. I pushed her and I watched her sink and I didn't help." The words hung in the air like a confession at an altar. Marcus Whitmore's face went white, then red, then white again. "We're done talking," he said to the officers. "She's a minor in shock. Nothing she says right now is admissible." But it was too late. The words were out. The truth was out. And somewhere beyond the office walls, Hoa Nguyen's phone was buzzing with messages of support from people who'd finally found the courage to speak up. People who'd watched Karen reign through fear and silence. People who'd been waiting for this moment without knowing it was coming. Justice, it turned out, didn't always announce itself with gavels and robes. Sometimes it came with a phone camera and a girl brave enough to press upload. Hoa's mother arrived 45 minutes later, still wearing her cleaning uniform, her dark hair escaping from its bun in wisps that framed her tired face. When she saw Hoa sitting on the examination table with the compress against her head, something crumpled in her expression, relief and rage and fear all mixed together. "Con Guy," she whispered, rushing forward, "my daughter." Her hands moved over Hoa's face, checking for injuries with the desperate thoroughness of someone who'd already lost too much. "What happened? The school said there was an accident." "It wasn't an accident, Mom," Hoa's voice cracked. "Karen Whitmore pushed me into the pool. I hit my head. I almost—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Her mother pulled her close, and Hoa breathed in the smell of lemon cleaner and lavender fabric softener, the scent of other people's houses, other people's lives that her mother worked herself to exhaustion to maintain. "That girl," her mother said softly, and there was something dangerous in her voice. "The Whitmore girl, I clean her house, I see how she treats people." She pulled back, her hands gripping Hoa's shoulders. "Did anyone see? Can you prove this?" "Someone recorded it," Hoa said. "It's everywhere online now." Her mother's expression shifted, worry to calculation. Lan Nguyen had come to America with nothing, had worked 3 jobs to keep Hoa fed and clothed and in school. She'd taught her daughter to be quiet, to work hard, to not make waves. But she'd also taught her something else. That silence was survival only until it became complicity. "Good," Lan said firmly. "Then they cannot lie their way out of this." Nurse Patterson emerged from her office with paperwork. "Mrs. Nguyen, I need you to sign these forms. Hoa needs to be monitored for the next 48 hours. If she shows signs of confusion, severe headache, vomiting, or loss of consciousness, take her to the emergency room immediately." As her mother read through the forms with painstaking care, English was her 3rd language, and she never signed anything she didn't fully understand. Hoa's phone buzzed again. She turned off most notifications, but calls still came through. This time it was a number she recognized. She answered hesitantly. "Hoa, it's Jade Nguyen," the girl from the pool, the one who'd recorded everything. "I just wanted to check if you're okay, and to tell you the principal called me in for a statement. My parents are here. They're taking this really seriously." "Thank you," Hoa said quietly, "for recording it, for not deleting it when she asked." There was a pause. "My older sister went to Westridge 3 years ago. Karen made her life hell. She ended up transferring because it got so bad and nobody believed her because there was never any proof." Jade's voice hardened. "I wasn't going to let that happen again, not when I could do something about it." After they hung up, Hoa stared at her phone. The video had 15,000 views now. The comments had multiplied into the thousands. But something else was happening too. People were sharing their own stories. Other students, other targets, other people who'd been ground down by Karen's particular brand of cruelty. The silence was breaking, and it was deafening. By Monday morning, Westridge Academy looked like a crime scene. News vans lined the street outside the gates. Reporters with microphones tried to intercept students arriving for class. Someone had spray-painted "Justice for HOA" on the stone wall near the entrance. The maintenance staff was already power washing it away, but phones had captured it, immortalized it. Hoa's mother had wanted her to stay home, but Hoa refused. She wasn't going to hide, not anymore. Derek met her at the entrance, along with Jade and two other students Hoa barely knew, Amy Cho and Marcus Johnson, both juniors. "We're walking you in," Derek said. It wasn't a question. "You don't have to." "Yes, we do," Amy interrupted. She was a small girl with fierce eyes. "Karen had her crew, you get to have yours." They walked through the gates together, a protective formation that drew stares and whispers. Hoa kept her head up, even though her heart was pounding and the back of her skull still throbbed with every step. The hallways parted around them like water. Some students looked away, others stared with open curiosity. A few, a surprising few, nodded or gave small smiles of support. Karen wasn't there. The rumor mill said she'd been suspended pending investigation, though her father's lawyers were fighting it. Other rumors said she'd been arrested, that she was being charged with assault, that her family was trying to settle out of court. Hoa didn't know what was true. She only knew that for the first time in 3 months, she walked into her first period class without the weight of dread crushing her chest. Until she saw the note on her desk. "You think you won, you didn't. Snitches get stitches." Hoa's hands trembled as she picked up the paper. The handwriting was unfamiliar, careful, disguised. She looked around the classroom, trying to catch someone's eye, but everyone was suddenly very interested in their phones or backpacks or the blank whiteboard. Derek saw it before she could hide it. His face darkened. "Who put this here?" No one answered. "I asked a question." Derek's voice cut through the room. "Someone put a threatening note on Hoa's desk. Who was it?" Madison Park, Karen's best friend, looked up from her phone with calculated innocence. Maybe if people didn't go running to the media every time something happens, they wouldn't get notes like that. Just saying. "Are you seriously defending her right now?" Amy stood up, her voice sharp. "Karen nearly killed someone." "Karen made a mistake," Madison shot back. "But I guess nobody's allowed to make mistakes anymore. One video and everyone becomes a saint, ready to destroy someone's entire life." "She's been bullying Hoa for months," Jade said. "This wasn't one mistake, it was a pattern." "According to who? The girl who probably provoked her." Madison's smile was thin. "We all know how this works. Play victim, get attention, ruin someone's life. It's a whole trend now." Hoa felt something snap inside her chest. She stood up, her legs steadier than she expected. "I didn't ask for this," she said, her voice carrying across the suddenly silent classroom. "I didn't want attention. I just wanted to swim without being humiliated. I wanted to go to class without being tripped. I wanted to exist in this school without being reminded every single day that people like you think I don't belong here." Madison rolled her eyes. "God, so dramatic." "I almost died." Hoa's voice rose, surprising even herself. "I went under and I couldn't breathe and I thought I was going to die in that pool, and Karen stood there and watched. That's not a mistake, Madison, that's a choice." The classroom door opened. Mrs. Brennan, their English teacher, walked in looking harried and 10 minutes late. "Take your seats, everyone, now." The tension deflated slightly, but Hoa could feel the weight of stares as she sat down. She tucked the note into her backpack, her hands still shaking. The whispers followed her through the rest of the day. Attention seeker. Victim complex. She probably wanted this to happen so she could sue. Karen's friends were good at narrative control, at planting doubt, at making cruelty look like defense. But something was different now. For every whisper, there was someone who met Hoa's eyes and nodded. Someone who said, "Hey," in the hallway. Someone who sat next to her at lunch, first just Derek and Jade, then Amy and Marcus, then 3 more students, then 5. By Wednesday, half a table. By Friday, 2 tables. The silence was breaking, and people were choosing sides. The emergency school board meeting happened on a Thursday evening. Hoa's mother insisted on attending, even though it meant losing another shift at work. They sat in the back of the meeting room, surrounded by other parents, students, reporters who'd somehow gotten inside. Principal Hawthorne stood at the podium, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else. "The board has reviewed the incident involving Karen Whitmore and Hoa Nguyen," he began. "We've interviewed witnesses, reviewed video evidence, and consulted with legal counsel. This is an extremely serious matter that strikes at the heart of Westridge Academy's values and mission." Marcus Whitmore sat in the front row, his attorney beside him. Karen wasn't present, protected from the public spectacle by her minor status and her father's influence. "However," Hawthorne continued, and Hoa's stomach sank at that word. We must also consider that Karen Whitmore is a 17-year-old student who made a grave error in judgment. Expulsion is a permanent mark that could affect her future college admissions and career prospects. We believe in rehabilitation over punishment, in education over condemnation. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Therefore, the board has decided on the following disciplinary action. Karen Whitmore will be suspended for the remainder of the semester. She will undergo mandatory counseling and complete 200 hours of community service. She will issue a public apology to Hoa Nguyen and the Westridge community, and she will be on probationary status upon her return, with any further incidents resulting in immediate expulsion. The room exploded. "That's it," someone shouted. "She almost killed someone." What message does this send to other bullies? Of course, the rich girl gets a slap on the wrist. Lan Nguyen stood up and the room gradually quieted. She was a small woman, barely 5 feet tall, wearing her best dress that was still obviously off-brand and out of style. But when she spoke, her voice carried. "I clean houses," she said in accented but clear English. "I clean Karen Whitmore's house. Every Wednesday I scrub her bathroom, wash her clothes, organize her closet, and every Wednesday she walks past me like I am invisible, like I am furniture." The room was completely silent now. "But when my daughter, who works 3 times harder than any student here, who earned her scholarship through excellence, not through money, when my daughter dares to exist in the same space as Karen Whitmore, suddenly I am not invisible. Suddenly my daughter is a target." Lan's voice shook, but she didn't stop. "You talk about Karen's future. What about my daughter's future? What about the futures of all the students who are taught that cruelty has no consequences if you have enough money? That is the lesson you teach today." She sat down. The silence that followed felt heavy, profound. Hawthorne cleared his throat. "Mrs. Nguyen, I understand your frustration." "No," said a new voice. Dr. Sarah Chen stood up. "You don't, none of you do, because your children aren't the ones being targeted. They're the ones doing the targeting." She looked around the room, meeting the eyes of other board members. "I've sat on this board for 6 years. 6 years of sweeping things under the rug because admitting we have a bullying problem might affect donations or admissions rankings. 6 years of protecting kids like Karen because their parents write big checks." She paused. "I'm resigning from the board effective immediately. I won't be complicit in this anymore." The room erupted again. Other voices joined hers, parents standing up, students who'd somehow gotten into the meeting adding their own stories. And in the chaos, Hoa watched Marcus Whitmore's face transform, not with shame or regret, but with cold calculation. He leaned over to his attorney, whispered something, then stood and walked out of the meeting without a word. He'd gotten what he came for. His daughter would return to school. The criminal investigation might still be pending, but the school had essentially endorsed a narrative of mistake over assault. He'd won, or so he thought. Because as Hoa watched him leave, her phone buzzed with a notification. Someone had sent her a link to a news article just published 15 minutes ago. WHITMOR, law firm faces ethics investigation following daughter's assault case. Anonymous sources within the firm allege that Marcus Whitmore attempted to intimidate witnesses and improperly influence school board members ahead of disciplinary hearing. Hoa looked up and caught Derek's eye across the room. He was holding his phone too, and his expression was grim but satisfied. His mother had resigned from the board, but she'd also made some calls first. Justice, Hoa was learning, didn't always look like victory in the moment. Sometimes it looked like a war of attrition, like small cracks in a fortress that seemed impenetrable. Sometimes it looked like choosing the long game over the quick satisfaction of revenge. The meeting eventually dissolved into chaos. Hawthorne called for order, failed to get it, and finally just adjourned. Parents clustered in angry groups. Students filmed everything. Reporters took notes. And Hoa sat next to her mother, feeling the weight of what had started as a simple desire to swim on a Friday afternoon. She'd wanted to be invisible. Instead, she'd become a symbol of something larger than herself, something she wasn't sure she wanted to be. But as she looked around the room at the faces that had finally found the courage to speak up, at the alliance forming in real time against a culture that had protected cruelty for too long, Hoa realized something. Sometimes you didn't get to choose your battles. Sometimes they chose you. And sometimes Just sometimes, you discovered you were stronger than you ever imagined. Corinne Whitmore sat in her bedroom, a space that could have housed a small family, decorated in the carefully curated aesthetic of someone who'd never had to think about money, and watched her life disintegrate in real time. Her phone, which her father had returned after the police interview, was a portal to hell. Every social media platform had become a tribunal. Her Instagram comments were disabled, but that hadn't stopped people from creating parody accounts. At Corinne the Pool Monster, at Westridge Bully, at Privileged Psycho. TikToks dissecting every frame of the video had millions of views. Twitter threads documented every prior incident anyone could remember. Someone had found her old Tumblr from middle school where she'd posted mean girl quotes like, "I'm not mean, I'm honest. And if you can't handle me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best." Screenshots were everywhere, used as evidence of a long-standing pattern of behavior. Her father's law firm was hemorrhaging clients. The ethics investigation had spawned 3 separate complaints to the state bar. Her mother had stopped speaking to her father entirely, communicating only through icy silence and separate bedrooms. And in 2 weeks, she'd have to go back to Westridge Academy. The thought made her physically ill. A knock on her door. "Corinne, it's Dr. Morrison. Our session starts in 5 minutes." Dr. Lisa Morrison was the court-appointed therapist, part of Corinne's plea deal. The criminal charges had been reduced from assault to reckless endangerment after her father's legal team negotiated for days. No jail time, no juvenile detention, just probation, community service, counseling, and the permanent stain on her record that would require explanation on every college application. "Come in," Corinne said, her voice hollow. Dr. Morrison entered, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes that Corinne didn't trust. Kindness, in her experience, was always transactional. "How are you feeling today?" Morrison settled into the chair across from Corinne's bed. "How do you think I'm feeling?" Corinne's voice was sharp, defensive. "My entire life is ruined. Everyone hates me. My dad's firm might collapse. My mom looks at me like I'm a stranger. And in 2 weeks I have to go back to school where literally everyone wants me dead." "Do you think you deserve that hatred?" Corinne's jaw clenched. "Is that what you want me to say? That I deserve this? That I'm a terrible person who deserves to be destroyed?" "I want you to answer the question honestly." The silence stretched. Corinne stared at her hands, perfectly manicured, maintained by a nail tech who came to the house every 2 weeks. Everything about her was maintained, curated, perfected, and none of it mattered anymore. "I don't know," she finally whispered. "I pushed her. I watched her sink. I didn't help." She looked up, her eyes burning. "But I didn't mean for her to hit her head. I didn't mean for her to almost drown. I just wanted." "Wanted what?" "I wanted her to feel small." The words came out in a rush, ugly and true. "I wanted her to know she didn't belong, that no matter how smart she was or how hard she worked, she'd never be one of us." "Why?" Corinne laughed bitterly. "Because Derek liked her, because she was everything I pretended to be, effortlessly good, genuinely kind, because looking at her made me feel like a fraud." She wiped at her eyes angrily. "Is that what you wanted to hear, that I'm a jealous bitch who nearly killed someone because I felt threatened?" Morrison didn't flinch. "I want you to understand why you did what you did, because until you understand it, you can't change it." "What if I don't want to change?" Corinne's voice cracked. "What if this is just who I am?" "Then you'll spend the rest of your life repeating this pattern. Different victims, same ending." Morrison leaned forward. "Corinne, you're 17 years old, you made terrible choices, you hurt people, but you're not beyond redemption. The question is whether you want it badly enough to do the work." After Morrison left, Corinne sat in the silence of her room and thought about Hoa Nguyen. Really thought about her for the first time. Hoa, who'd never fought back, who'd endured months of cruelty with quiet dignity, who'd almost died and was now facing her own trauma while Corinne sat in her mansion feeling sorry for herself. Corinne pulled out her laptop and searched for Hoa's name. The news articles were everywhere, but so was something else. A GoFundMe that someone had started to help Hoa's family with medical bills and lost wages. It had raised $47,000. The comment section was full of support. "This girl is a hero for not staying silent." "My daughter was bullied too. Thank you for speaking up." "The courage it takes to face your bully in court. Incredible." Court, right. The civil case that Hoa's family had filed was still pending. Corinne's father's attorneys were fighting it, but the video made their defense virtually impossible. Karen could give a statement. She could tell the truth, make it easier for Hoa's family to win. But her father had forbidden it. Anything she said could be used against her, could open up new legal liability. Protecting herself meant making things harder for Hoa. Just like everything else she'd done. Karen opened a new document and started typing. Hoa returned to school the following Monday to find her locker covered in sticky notes. "You're brave. Thank you for speaking up. You inspired me to report my bully. You're not alone." There were dozens of them, a rainbow of paper and ink that made her throat tight. She carefully removed each one, folding them into her backpack like precious artifacts. "Quite the fan club you've got," said a voice behind her. Hoa turned to find Madison Park leaning against the adjacent locker, her arms crossed. Without Karen, Madison looked smaller somehow, like a moon without its planet. "Madison," Hoa said carefully. "Relax, I'm not here to threaten you." Madison's voice was tired. "I'm here to apologize." Hoa blinked. "What?" "I was a bitch. I went along with everything Karen did because it was easier than standing up to her. I laughed when she made fun of you. I helped spread rumors. I was complicit in all of it." Madison looked down at her shoes. "And I'm sorry, it doesn't fix anything, but I wanted you to know." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because my therapist says I need to take accountability. And because," Madison's voice cracked slightly, "because I have a little sister in middle school, and last week I found out she's being bullied. And when my mom asked what we should do, I realized I was literally the bully in someone else's story." She met Hoa's eyes, and there was something raw there. "Karen's coming back next week. I don't know if she's changed or if she's just better at hiding it, but I'm not going to be her backup dancer anymore. I'm done being that person." Madison walked away before Hoa could respond, leaving her standing in the hallway with a backpack full of sticky notes and a complicated knot of feelings in her chest. Forgiveness wasn't simple. Madison's apology didn't erase months of cruelty, but it was something. A crack in the foundation of the system that had protected people like Karen for so long. By the time Karen's return date arrived, the school had transformed. There was a new anonymous reporting system for bullying, mandatory assemblies on harassment and bystander intervention, a student committee formed to review disciplinary policies. None of it would have happened without the video, without Jade's courage to press upload, without the collective decision of dozens of students to finally speak up. But it had happened, and now Karen Whitmore would return to a school that was fundamentally different from the one she'd left. Karen's first day back started in Principal Hawthorne's office at 7 a.m., before other students arrived. "You'll have a counselor check in every day," Hawthorne said, his voice professionally neutral. "Any incidents, and I mean any, from a snide comment to a dirty look, will result in immediate expulsion. You will not speak to or approach Hoa Nguyen unless she initiates contact. You will attend your classes, complete your work, and keep your head down. Are we clear?" "Crystal," Karen said quietly, "I want you to understand something, Ms. Whitmore. The only reason you're here is because the board believes in second chances, but you don't get a third chance. This is it." Karen nodded, her throat too tight to speak. Walking into school at 7:45, surrounded by the security guard Hawthorne had assigned as her escort for the first week, was the longest walk of Karen's life. Students stopped and stared. Some whispered, others just glared openly. Her first class was AP English, the same class as Hoa. Karen paused outside the door, her heart hammering. Through the window, she could see Hoa already at her desk, talking quietly with Derek and Jade. She looked different, more confident maybe. Or maybe Karen was just seeing her clearly for the first time. The security guard cleared his throat. "Time to go in, Ms. Whitmore." Karen pushed open the door. The classroom went silent. She walked to her assigned seat, the back corner as far from Hoa as possible, and sat down. Every eye in the room tracked her movement. Mrs. Brennan cleared her throat. "Good morning, everyone. Let's begin with our discussion of the Crucible. Who wants to talk about the themes of reputation and public confession in Act 3? The class slowly returned to normal, though Karen could feel the weight of attention even when people weren't looking directly at her. She was a pariah, an object lesson, a cautionary tale. At lunch, she sat alone. The cafeteria had always been her kingdom. She'd held court at the center table, surrounded by friends and admirers and people who'd wanted to be close to her power. Now she sat at a table near the emergency exit, eating a sandwich she couldn't taste, trying to be as invisible as possible. "This seat taken." Karen looked up startled. Derek Chen stood there with his tray, his expression unreadable. "What are you doing?" Karen asked. "Sitting down, unless you're going to push me into something." Karen flinched. "That's not funny." "It wasn't meant to be." Derek sat across from her. "I'm not here to be your friend, Karen. I'm here because I spent the last 3 weeks watching social media turn you into a monster, and I realized something. You did a monstrous thing, but you're not a monster. You're a 17-year-old kid who made terrible choices. So what, you're here out of pity?" "I'm here because someone needs to model what accountability looks like. You screwed up. Massively. But if we just cast you out forever, what's the incentive to change? What's the point of rehabilitation if we never let anyone rehabilitate?" Karen stared at him. "Ho is your girlfriend now, isn't she?" "That's none of your business, but yes. And she knows you're sitting with me." It was her idea. Karen's head snapped up. "What?" "She said that if you're really going to change, someone needs to show you what that looks like. Someone needs to be willing to see you as more than your worst moment." Derek took a bite of his sandwich. "Personally, I think she's being too generous, but that's who she is, so here I am." Tears burned Karen's eyes. She blinked them back furiously. "I don't deserve that." "No," Derek agreed. "You don't, which is exactly why it means something." Across the cafeteria, Karen could see Hoa sitting with her growing group of friends, laughing at something Amy said. She looked happy. Genuinely, unself-consciously happy. Karen had spent months trying to destroy that happiness, and Hoa's response was to extend a lifeline. "I wrote an apology," Karen said quietly. "A real one, not the lawyer-approved statement my dad made me release. I want to give it to her, but I'm not allowed to approach her." "Give it to me. I'll make sure she gets it." Karen pulled the folded paper from her backpack. It was 3 pages, handwritten, tear-stained in places. She'd rewritten it 17 times before getting it right. Derek took it without reading it. "This doesn't fix anything." "I know. And she doesn't have to forgive you." "I know that too." Derek nodded and stood up. "Then I guess you're finally starting to understand." He walked back to Hoa's table. Karen watched him hand over the letter, watched Hoa's expression shift from confusion to surprise to something more complicated. She didn't open it in the cafeteria. She just tucked it into her bag and returned to her conversation. Karen finished her lunch alone, but somehow it felt different. Less like exile and more like the first step of a very long journey. She didn't know if Hoa would ever read her apology. She didn't know if anything she did would ever be enough to make amends. But for the first time in weeks, she felt something other than self-pity and rage. She felt the faint, fragile beginning of hope that maybe, just maybe, she could become someone better than who she'd been. And that would have to be enough. Hoa didn't open the letter until she got home that night. She sat on her bed in the small apartment she shared with her mother, one bedroom that they split with a curtain down the middle, a kitchen that barely fit 2 people, a living room that doubled as her study space. The contrast to Karen's mansion, which she'd only seen in social media posts, was almost laughable. She unfolded the pages carefully, half expecting a trap. Some lawyer-crafted non-apology designed to help Karen's court case. But the handwriting was messy, urgent, and the words were raw in a way that legal documents never were. "Dear Hoa, I don't know if you'll read this. I don't know if you should. My therapist says I need to write it anyway, not for you but for me, which seems like typical selfish Karen behavior. But here goes. I'm sorry. I know those words don't mean much. They're what people say when they step on your foot or show up late. They don't cover what I did to you. There aren't really words that do. I pushed you into the pool. I watched you sink. I stood there for 3 seconds. I've counted them frame by frame in the video, 3 eternal seconds, and I didn't move. Part of me didn't want to move. Part of me wanted you to suffer. That's the part I can't stop thinking about. Not the push, not even the watching, but the wanting. I wanted you to hurt because you made me feel small, not through anything you did, but through everything you were. You were smarter than me without trying, kinder than me without calculating. Derek looked at you the way he'd never looked at me, like you were real and I was just a performance. So I tried to make you small. I tried to break you down until you were as miserable as I was pretending not to be. My therapist asks me why I felt so threatened by you. I'm still figuring that out. Maybe it's because I've spent my entire life being told I'm special because of what my family has, not because of who I am. Maybe it's because deep down I knew that if we competed on any level playing field, you'd win. Maybe it's because I'm just a scared, insecure girl who learned that cruelty was easier than vulnerability. None of that excuses what I did. Nothing excuses it. I've read the articles about you. About your mom working 3 jobs to get you into Westridge. About your scholarship. About the GoFundMe that raised money for your medical bills because I hurt you badly enough that you needed medical bills. I've read the comments from people who said you inspired them to speak up about their own bullies. I've read the stories from other students who said I made their lives hell too. People I barely remember because they didn't matter enough to me to remember. That's the worst part. Not that I was cruel, but that I was casually cruel. That destroying people was just something I did, like getting my nails done or posting on Instagram. You asked me once in the hallway after I'd tripped you why I hated you so much. I said something bitchy about scholarship students not knowing their place. But the real answer? I didn't hate you. I hated what you represented, the possibility that kindness and hard work might actually matter more than money and cruelty. I hated that you were proof I was wasting my life being terrible. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm not asking you to feel sorry for me. My consequences are still a fraction of what they should be, and we both know it. I'm definitely not asking you to be my friend or give me some kind of redemption arc where we hug it out and I'm suddenly a better person. I just wanted you to know that I see you now. Really see you, not as a target or a threat, but as a person I hurt. A person who almost died because of me. A person who's been braver in 3 months than I've been in 17 years. I wanted you to know that I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be someone who would never do what I did. I don't know if I'll succeed, but I'm going to try. And I wanted to say thank you. Thank you for not letting me get away with it. Thank you for being strong enough to press charges and pursue the civil case even when my father's lawyers tried to intimidate your family. Thank you for creating the space where other people could finally speak up about the things they'd been too afraid to say. Thank you for being proof that silence isn't the only option. I know my dad's legal team is still fighting your civil case. I've told him I want to give a deposition supporting your side. He says it would destroy our defense. I told him that's kind of the point. We shouldn't have a defense because I'm guilty. We're not speaking much these days. I'm not telling you this to get credit. I'm telling you because you deserve to know that not everyone in my family thinks money can fix what I broke. I'm going to be at Westridge for the rest of the year. I know the school made rules about me not approaching you. I'll follow them. But if you ever want to talk, to yell at me, to tell me exactly what it felt like to sink into that water, to explain in detail why I'm a garbage human, I'll listen. No defense. No excuses, just listening. That's the least I owe you. I'm sorry, Hoa, for everything. For the pool. For the months before the pool. For every casual cruelty I committed because I could. I'm sorry I had to almost kill you to learn that other people are real. Karen. Hoa read the letter 3 times. Each time she looked for the trap, the hidden agenda, the self-serving narrative, the manipulation. But if it was there, it was subtle enough that she couldn't find it. She set the letter down and stared at the ceiling of her half-bedroom, listening to her mother moving around in the kitchen, preparing dinner from whatever she'd managed to buy on sale that week. The anger was still there. The trauma was still there. She still flinched when people moved too quickly near water. She still had nightmares about sinking, about the water filling her lungs, about Karen's face watching her drown. An apology letter didn't erase any of that. But it was something, a starting point, an acknowledgement of harm that so many victims never received. Hoa picked up her phone and texted Derek. I read it. His response came immediately, and, I don't forgive her. I'm not ready to forgive her. Maybe I never will be. That's fair. But I don't want to spend the rest of my life hating her either. I don't want what she did to define who I become. Also fair. Tell her I got the letter. Tell her I'm not ready to talk, but maybe someday. Will do. Hoa set down her phone and went to help her mother with dinner. They worked in comfortable silence, the way they always had, an efficiency born from years of making the most of limited space and resources. That girl's letter, her mother said finally, not looking up from the vegetables she was chopping. Did you read it? How did you? Derek called me, asked if I thought you should read it. I told him that was your choice. Lan glanced at her daughter. So, did you? Yeah. And? And she's sorry. Really sorry, I think, not fake sorry. Lan's knife paused mid-chop. Good, sorry is the beginning, not the end, but it's a beginning. The civil case. We'll proceed, her mother said firmly. Sorry doesn't pay medical bills. Sorry doesn't compensate for trauma. Sorry doesn't teach wealthy families that actions have consequences. She resumed chopping. But sorry can be the first step toward becoming better. Your forgiveness is separate from justice. You can give one without giving the other. Hoa absorbed this wisdom, as she'd absorbed so much wisdom from her mother over the years. Lan Nguyen had survived war, poverty, immigration, and single parenthood. She'd learned to hold multiple truths at once, that people could be both victims and accountable, that forgiveness was a gift, not an obligation, that justice and mercy weren't always opposites. I'm proud of you, Con Guy, Lan said softly. Not because you spoke up, though I'm proud of that too, but because you didn't let what happened make you cruel. That girl tried to break you, and instead you grew stronger. That's real victory. 3 weeks later, the civil case went to mediation. Karen, against her father's explicit orders and over her attorney's protests, gave a deposition that was devastating in its honesty. She corroborated every detail of Hoa's testimony. She admitted to a pattern of harassment. She took full responsibility without reservation. Her testimony made the case unwinnable for the defense. Marcus Whitmore settled for $250,000, enough to cover medical bills, therapy costs, and create a college fund that would ensure Hoa never had to worry about tuition. Karen's trust fund took the hit. She didn't complain. The day after the settlement, Hoa found Karen sitting on the floor outside the school library, working on what looked like a scholarship application of her own. Your dad cut you off? Hoa asked before she could stop herself. Karen looked up startled. Hoa, sorry, I'm not supposed to. I approached you, it's fine. Hoa slid down the wall to sit a few feet away. So, did he? Karen laughed bitterly. He said if I was going to betray the family, I could fund my own college education. My mom's helping a little, but mostly I'm on my own. Turns out having caused a viral assault incident on your record doesn't make you super scholarship competitive. I know a good scholarship counselor, Hoa said. She helped me, I could give you her name. Karen's eyes filled with tears. Why are you being nice to me? I'm not being nice, I'm being fair. You did something terrible, you're facing consequences, you're trying to be better. Hoa shrugged. That's more than most people do, and having you forever would just mean you still control part of my life. I'm done giving you that power. I don't deserve your help. Probably not, but my scholarship counselor deserves the business, and you deserve the chance to earn your own way for once. Hoa stood up. I'm not saying we're friends. I'm not saying I forgive you. I'm saying I'm choosing not to let what you did turn me into someone bitter. She started to walk away, then paused. Also, the apology letter helped. It didn't fix anything, but it helped. Karen nodded, not trusting herself to speak. By the end of the school year, Westridge Academy had changed fundamentally. The new anti-bullying policies had teeth. The anonymous reporting system had led to 3 more investigations. The culture of silence had cracked wide open. Hoa became student council vice president. She started a peer mentorship program for scholarship students. She gave a TEDx talk about bystander intervention that went viral, not as viral as the pool video, but viral enough. Karen completed her community service at a women's shelter, where she learned that privilege was a responsibility, not a right. She got into a state school on partial scholarship, not the Ivy League her father had expected, but a genuine achievement earned through her own effort. She started a blog about recovering from being a bully that helped other kids navigate their own redemption journeys. They weren't friends, they probably never would be. But one day, near the end of senior year, they passed each other in the hallway. Karen was carrying a donation box for the scholarship fund Hoa had established. Hoa was wearing her college acceptance shirt, full ride to Berkeley. They made eye contact. Karen nodded, Hoa nodded back. It wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't friendship. It was acknowledgement of harm done and growth attempted, of the long, difficult work of becoming better than your worst moments. Sometimes that was enough. On the last day of school, Hoa returned to the swimming pool for the first time since the incident. The water shimmered in the afternoon sun, peaceful and inviting. Derek, Jade, Amy, and Marcus were already there, having claimed their territory at the deep end. "You sure about this?" Derek asked quietly as Hoa approached the edge. "No," Hoa admitted, "but I'm not letting fear win." She dove in clean, confident, the product of months of therapy and practice pools and sheer stubborn determination. The water enveloped her, and for a moment the panic tried to rise. But she pushed through it, kicked toward the surface, broke into sunlight. Her friends cheered. She treaded water, looking up at the school building where so much had changed. A figure stood at one of the classroom windows, watching. Karen, too far away to read her expression but close enough to be visible. Hoa raised one hand in acknowledgement. After a moment, Karen raised hers back. Then she turned away from the window, and Hoa turned back to her friends, and they both continued the separate journeys they'd started that day in October when everything changed. Karen's journey toward redemption. Hoa's journey toward healing. Both of them learning that sometimes the most powerful thing you could do was survive your own story and refuse to let it be the only story you'd ever tell. Sometimes justice looked like punishment. Sometimes it looked like accountability. Sometimes it looked like two girls who'd been on opposite sides of cruelty, finding their own separate ways toward becoming something more than their worst and best moments. Sometimes it looked like choosing, every single day, to be better than you were yesterday. And sometimes, just sometimes, that was enough.